And of course, we are very pleased and very proud to welcome Secretary Panetta and General Dempsey. Our men and women in uniform should not fear their fellow service members. Sexual assault is not an issue of bad behavior. It's not an issue of bad judgment. It is a crime. It is a crime that Congress has been pushing diligently to try to both change laws and culture within DOD to ensure that our service members have the confidence that they will be safe. That not only will we have strong programs for prevention, but we will have strong prosecutions and, of course, strong protection for those who come forward who are victims of sexual assault. In my own community, I had a tragic case of Maria Lauterbach, who was both raped, came forward with her accusation, was subsequently murdered by her accused. And her case mirrors that of many of members of Congress that bring forth many of these changes that need to occur in our laws. I want to thank Secretary Panetta for his coming forward to both institute a change of culture in the Department of Defense, but also embrace a change of rules and laws that will make certain that service members, when they step forward and say they're going to serve their country, know that they have the full protection of their country as they serve. With that, I'd like to introduce my co-chair, Congresswoman Tsongas.
Thank you, Congressman Turner. It's a privilege to be here with you and all the others who care about this great issue. And I want to thank Secretary Panetta and General Dempsey for coming here today for a very encouraging briefing, which we just concluded. The substantive changes that they are talking about making underscore a renewed commitment to address this grievous issue. We all have our stories to tell. For me, it was a nurse, someone who had served several times both in Iraq and Afghanistan, who told me when I asked, was it true, the statistics, she said, ma'am, I am more afraid of my own soldiers than I am of the enemy. So as a result, we all have a story like that that has made this very, very real for us. We know the statistics. So it is, I think, a real step forward to have our Secretary here, to have our Chairman of the Joint Chiefs here today. But we also know that we in Congress who've worked long and hard on this need to stay on top of it as well, that despite all the good intentions and all the good programs that we've been hearing about for many years, there's still much that remains to be done. And so I look forward to working with our Secretary, with our Chairman, but most importantly, we want to make sure that these things work. And over time, that we can report some good news instead of the same alarming statistics that we hear over and over again. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, of our caucus. And now I'd like to turn it over to Loretta Sanchez, who chairs the Women in the Military Caucus, Congresswoman Loretta Sanchez, and a longtime champion of this issue.
I thank my colleagues from Massachusetts, and it's, you know, when I began my first month in the Congress in 1997 on the Armed Services Committee of the House, there weren't that many women there, and there were a lot of problems for women in particular in the military. And I'm so grateful now that we have so many women in particular on the Congress, but of course the gentlemen who work with us on these issues. So we have over the years implemented, changed the laws, put in new programs, and of course today our Chairman, General Dempsey, and our Secretary of Defense, Leon Panetta, have come before the members of the Women in Military Caucus and the Sexual Assault Prevention Caucus to discuss some of the new initiatives that they have to work harder at ensuring that the laws are correct, that, that the culture and the climate of our military changes so that we don't see sexual assault happening, and that if we should see that, that not only are we qualified, we have teams qualified to get the evidence we need to do prosecutions and successful prosecutions, but that our victims are treated with respect and in a correct manner. And so I began our conversation as we met with our Secretary that I believe, and I know him because he's a fellow Californian, and I've known him for many years now, that he carries the same values that our members of Congress who are working so diligently on this, he carries the same values. And because of that, I do believe that you're working very hard, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Secretary, to help us to better understand this problem and to solve this problem. And so I would like to introduce our Secretary of Defense, Leon Panetta.
Thank you very much, and I want to express my deepest thanks to the members of Congress that joined with us to discuss this issue. They have, for a long time, been leaders on this issue here in the Congress. We wanted to meet with them, to brief them on the steps that we'd like to take, and to work with them to ensure that legislation that we need is incorporated in the authorization bill so that we can move forward on what General Dempsey and I consider to be a serious problem that needs to be confronted at the Department of Defense and in the United States military. Sexual assault has no place in the military. It is a violation of everything that the U.S. military stands for. General Dempsey and I have, I think, made it a point to try to open up the military to everyone who wants to serve this country. The problem is that sexual assault remains a disincentive for many to become a part of the United States military. We've got to deal with that, and we will. We have taken some steps in the past to try to begin to deal with this problem. We have put forward a number of initiatives. Let me just summarize some of the past initiatives that we've done. We've assigned a two-star general as the director of the Sexual Assault Prevention and Response Office to try to highlight the importance of dealing with this issue and increase the command authority in dealing with this issue. We've implemented a number of new policies that expand legal assistance, that expedite transfers for those that want to move from a unit, and that also provide extended document retention, something that was not the case in the past. We also have stood up a DoD-wide 24/7 anonymous hotline to be able to encourage victims to report. And in addition to that, we've now activated an integrated database that it contains all of the information with regards to sexual assaults. We need to do more, and I've made the commitment that we will move forward to incorporate some of the ideas that have been suggested by members of Congress into additional steps here. We believe that we've developed a set of initiatives that fundamentally change the way the department deals with this problem. Let me summarize some of the steps that we're recommending and that we will work with Congress in trying to include in a legislative package. First of all, as of the next few days, what I will do is change the way these cases are handled in the military. I intend to issue a directive as Secretary of Defense that will elevate the disposition of sexual assault cases so that at a minimum these cases are disposed of at a special court-martial level. That means that the local unit commander is required to report these cases. When he gets a sexual assault case, is required to report that to a special court-martial level, generally a colonel status, or if necessary to a general court-martial level for investigation into the matter to be handled. And the key here is that at the local unit level, sometimes these matters are put aside, they're not followed up with. This requires that any time a complaint is received, that is referred up the chain of command for action. It ensures that we emphasize the role of the chain of command and that we continue to emphasize that all commanders have to exercise good discipline, take control, and they need to understand that everyone has a responsibility to deal with these issues. But most importantly, we are assured that at a higher command level, we will have action taken with regards to the complaints that have been made. Secondly, to be able to effectively investigate and prosecute these sexual assault cases, it requires a particular expertise in gathering the evidence. We are creating a special victims unit or capability within each of the services to be able to do this. This will ensure that we have highly trained experts who are trained in evidence collection, the best ways to interview survivors of the sexual assault and who have common offender behaviors, being able to determine what those behaviors are like. We also will want to ensure that members of the National Guard and Reserve who file complaints are able to remain on active duty once they file those complaints in order to ensure that their sexual assault complaint is handled. At the present time, those in the Guard and Reserve, if they're on active duty and make the complaint, they then are moved into their National Guard or Reserve status, and they lose the ability to continue that kind of prosecution of their complaint. What we're doing is requiring that they be able to stay on active duty in order to ensure that the case is continued to be handled. And fourthly, we have to do everything we can to train and educate the force with regards to these issues. We're going to focus on the newest members, new arrivals, and require that DOD sexual assault policy be explained and briefed to them within 14 days of entering active duty. Secondly, we also want to mandate that information on sexual assault sources, such as the DOD self-helpline and other things, are widely publicized so that members are aware of what's available to them. And thirdly, we are looking to require commanders to conduct annual climate assessment analysis with regards to sexual assault, something that isn't required at the present time. This is a strong package. It's essential, we believe, to being able to prevent and respond to the crime of sexual assault. Look, there's no silver bullet when it comes to this issue. But what is required is that everyone, from the Secretary to the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, all the way down at every command level, be sensitive to this issue, be aware that they bear the responsibility to take action on these cases. The most important thing we can do is prosecute the offenders, deal with those that have broken the law and committed this crime. And if we can do that, then we can begin to deal with this issue. Not only prosecute those that are involved, but more importantly, send a signal that this is not a problem that we are going to ignore in the United States military. Let me ask General Dempsey to say a few words.
Thank you, sir. Good evening. I'm here actually speaking not just for myself, but for the Joint Chiefs. And we realize that the crime of sexual assault erodes the very fabric of our profession. Our profession is built on trust, and this particular crime erodes that trust. We've been hard at it for some years trying to make a difference, and we haven't been able to make a difference. So as Joint Chiefs, we're coming together with the support of the Secretary of Defense and in collaboration with this caucus to try to get after it and to actually make a difference. Thank you.
I believe that the chairman and the secretary have to leave in just a couple minutes. I don't know if you have time to take a question from the...
Mr. Secretary, related to this issue, not directly but perhaps indirectly, General Dempsey spoke about it briefly earlier today, I believe, but can you share with us what you know about military personnel involved in alleged sexual misconduct in Colombia? Can you tell us where the investigation stands and what you think are the next steps for these allegations as they exist inside DOD?
Well, as I indicated, you know, whether these individuals were in Colombia or any country or in the United States, we expect them to abide by the highest standard of behavior, and that's a requirement. So we've asked for a full investigation of the matter. It is being investigated by Southern Command. General Frazier, he's already deployed an officer to the scene to investigate it. We'll await the report from that investigation, and I can assure you that if that investigation determines that there has been a violation, that the individuals involved will be held accountable.
Do you have time? Or do
Over the weekend, the CNN reported that past victims of sexual assault have oftentimes been, for lack of a better term, drummed out of the military because they've been diagnosed with personality disorder or other psychiatric problems. And then their charges go uninvestigated. Aside from the dramatic steps that you're taking today and that you've taken since you took office, is anything going to be done for these victims, mostly women, who are not only were their crimes against them not investigated and punished, but in some cases, these women are being expected to pay back the military for the training they got.
Yeah.
So it's actually costing them money. Is there any chance that anything can be addressed on that?
Well, I mean, look, obviously our goal here is to try to put in place what we need in order to deal with these cases as we move forward. There are procedures within the Department of Defense that allow these individuals to raise these concerns and determine whether or not they have not been treated fairly. But I think, and I hope that they'll follow those procedures to determine whether or not that has been the case.
Quick question. Are these steps taking effect immediately, or do you need authorization from Congress?
The step with regards to moving it to the special court-martial level, I can take through executive action, and I will. Obviously, if the Congress decides to incorporate it as part of legislation, that's fine too. But these other steps will require legislation.
There currently is the National Defense Authorization Act is currently moving forward with provisions in it that relate to, in part, to what the Secretary is bringing forward. And so we're coordinating to make sure that that language is identical to what the Secretary is adopting as policy.
To clarify, does this special victim unit include special prosecutors like what the Army has now? And can you talk a little bit about what kind of training they'll get? Will their training be based on the Army model? And is this tied in with the $10 million in funding that you announced, I believe, in January?
The Army, let me ask General Dempsey to comment on that.
Yeah, a year or more ago, we began to give our criminal investigators special training in investigating this particular crime. What the Secretary has directed us to do now is actually form a special group of prosecutors who aren't, this is not something they do among all other criminal investigations. It's focused on this event. We think that that's the next logical step.
Are you on time, Mr. Secretary?
One more question?
One more question.
So I'd like to ask you both about the budget, if I can. General Dempsey, I know you were asked about Budget Chairman Ryan's comments when it happened. Since then, he walked back his comment a little bit, and Senator McConnell came forward saying he thought that was clearly sensitive in the Pentagon that they knew about to the President's budget request. I wonder if you both tell us where you stand on what people who are dissenters in the Pentagon can or can't say about the President's budget request, specifically senior members in uniform. Should they be given a voice, or is this political theater that's happening?
They sure as hell can be given a voice, and they are given a voice. We've had 50 hearings on the Hill dealing with the budget in which they've been asked questions regarding both the strategy and the budget decisions. The bottom line is that this was a team effort. Everybody worked together on the strategy. Everybody worked together on the budget decisions. And I think the fact that we are unified as a team with regards to the strategy and the budget can be an aggravation for some, but it happens to be the fact.
Great.
What he said. No, let me just add, one of the things the Secretary said to us at the very beginning of this process was that it was important for us to know that in his view, dissent was not disloyalty. And so what he just said has been the climate that he has established throughout this process. A very challenging process, but the climate has been one where we have been able to collaborate.
There's a pushback now that generals who do speak out will be somehow jeopardizing their career movement.
I've never heard of any such thing happening in my entire 38 years. How do I answer that question? Look, all I can tell you is what I have experienced personally. I don't see that. And if any generals are listening, come and talk to me if you feel that way.
Or Congress.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Good job.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Watch it.
Thank you, General.
That's a heightened level of crime.